Nobody wanted them near the baby, not the grandparents, not the neighbors, not a single person who walked through that front door. Two massive Rottweilers, each over 110 pounds, jet black with copper markings that ran down their legs like brush strokes of fire. Everyone said the same thing: get rid of them before the baby comes, before something goes wrong. But Jake and Rachel didn't listen. And what those two dogs did every single night for the next 14 months would silence every single one of them. For good. But to understand why, we have to go back to before the crib, back to when it was just Jake, Rachel, and two very large dogs named Thor and Duke. Jake had always wanted Rottweilers. He grew up reading about the breed, their loyalty, their history as protectors, their sensitivity to the people they loved. Thor came first. 8 weeks old, barely bigger than Jake's forearm, with paws so large they looked borrowed from a different dog entirely. Duke arrived 18 months later. Quieter than Thor, more watchful, the kind of dog who would sit by the window for an hour and just observe, like he was filing information away for later. By the time Rachel became pregnant, Thor weighed 112 pounds and Duke was closing in on 108. Together, they took up most of the living room floor just by lying down. And that was exactly when the conversation started. Rachel's mother called first. "You cannot have dogs that size in a house with a newborn. It's not safe." Then her sister. Then the neighbor who leaned over the fence one afternoon and said it plainly, "You know you're going to have to rehome them, right?" Jake listened to every word. Then he walked back inside, sat down on the floor between Thor and Duke, and said nothing. Because Jake had watched these dogs for almost 3 years. He'd seen Thor carry a wounded sparrow out of the garage without leaving a single mark on its feathers. He'd seen Duke press himself against Rachel's leg the night she came home from her father's funeral and sit there, perfectly still for 2 hours without moving a single inch. These were not dangerous dogs. These were dogs who understood when something mattered. And what happened next? Nobody could have predicted. I see you still haven't subscribed. Honestly, that breaks my heart a little. Hit that button right now, because what these two dogs did at 3 a.m. is something you will not want to miss. The night they brought baby Noah home, Jake had a plan. Thor and Duke would stay in the kitchen. Slow introduction, controlled environment, baby gates stacked in the hallway, the trainer's number saved in his phone, just in case. What actually happened threw every part of that plan out the window. Rachel walked through the front door carrying Noah wrapped in a soft white blanket. Thor and Duke were already in the hallway. They hadn't been let in. Jake had no idea how Duke pushed the kitchen door open, but there they were, both of them completely still, not pacing, not jumping, not making a sound, just waiting. Thor took one slow step forward. He lowered his enormous head, he sniffed the edge of Noah's blanket once, then twice, then he exhaled long, slow, all the way down to his bones, and sat. Duke did the same 30 seconds later, and then both dogs walked to either side of Rachel and simply stayed there, like an escort, like they had been waiting for this exact moment their whole lives. Jake stood in the doorway and forgot to breathe. The baby gates stayed in the hallway, unopened. He never called the trainer. From that very first night, the routine established itself. Nobody planned it, nobody enforced it. Every evening when Rachel laid Noah down in the crib, Thor would settle at the foot of it, heavy head resting on crossed paws, breathing slow and even. Duke would position himself just inside the nursery door facing outward, like a sentry, like he had accepted a responsibility nobody had assigned him, and he took it more seriously than anything in his life. When Noah cried in the night, both dogs were already at the crib before Rachel was fully awake. Not barking, not anxious, just there, completely, quietly, entirely there. Rachel started filming it, not because she planned to share it, just because it felt too important to lose. Noah, at 2 months old, asleep between two 110-pound Rottweilers on the couch, one dog pressed against each side, his tiny hand resting on Thor's leg. The dogs hadn't moved in over 40 minutes. Their breathing was slow and deliberate, like they both understood that this small, fragile thing between them needed to be protected from everything, from everyone, from the world itself. And then came the night that changed everything. It was 3:14 in the morning. Jake woke up to a sound he had never heard from Duke before. Not a bark, not a whine. A low, urgent sound, layered and wrong, that cut straight through the silence of the house and brought Jake to his feet before he was fully awake. He ran down the hallway. Duke was standing at the nursery door, completely rigid, every muscle locked. Thor was already inside, pressed against the crib, staring down at Noah. Jake leaned over. Noah's face was flushed. His breathing was too fast, too shallow. Jake touched his cheek and felt the heat immediately, 102.9 degrees. They were in the car within 5 minutes. Rachel in the back seat holding Noah, Thor pressing his nose against a car window the entire drive. The doctor told them they were right to come in when they did. The fever was treated, Noah was home by morning, and Jake sat in that hospital waiting room at 4 a.m. thinking about one single thing. He had heard nothing, not a sound out of the ordinary. Duke had. Today, Noah is 14 months old. He pulls himself across the living room floor toward Thor and Duke with total single-minded determination. He grabs Duke's ear with both hands. He presses his whole face into Thor's neck. He uses their backs to pull himself to standing, and they hold perfectly still every single time. 4 solid paws planted, not budging an inch, until he finds his balance. The neighbors who once said, "Get rid of them," don't say much anymore. Some stop on walks just to say the dogs' names. Rachel doesn't try to explain it to anyone now, because some things cannot be explained. They can only be witnessed. A 110-pound dog choosing gentleness on purpose. Something that powerful deciding every single day to be careful. That is not training. That is not instinct. That is a choice made quietly, without being asked, without being told, from the very first night Noah came through that door. If you have ever been warned about a breed and then watched that breed love someone in a way that left you completely speechless, you already know every word of this story by heart. And if you are thinking about giving a large breed a real chance, please do. They are not what people fear. They are often exactly what a family needs. Is this love or something deeper than love? Would you have trusted Thor and Duke from that very first night, or would you have listened to everyone else? Tell me in the comments.